Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome to today's WNTV program. My name is Shukufta Akhtar. I'll be your host for the day. We have some very distinguished guests we have here on Zoom. But before we get on to that, I'd just like to talk about why we are here and what the program is all about. Today, we'll be talking all about marking India's Independence Day as Black Day all over the world and in the UK. India's Independence Day has been marked as Black Day. The rights of minorities, human rights violations, and religious sectarianism has led to hundreds and thousands of people protesting right across the world. We'll let our distinguished guests talk about this in a bit more detail. But first of all, before we carry on any further, let's just watch a very short video documentary from the protests that took part in Birmingham today. So moving on to the documentary.
Stop killing! Stop killing! Stop killing! Stop killing! Indian forces! Indian forces! Indian forces! We want! We want! Stop killing! Stop killing! We want! What do we want? What do we want? When do we want? When do we want?
One track, go India, go back. One slogan, one track. One slogan, one track. One slogan, one track. Stop killing. Stop killing.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome back. And there we can see scenes of people protesting outside the General Consulate of India in Birmingham. India's track record on human rights is appalling. And to talk more about this, I'd just like to move on to Phil Banyan, former MEP. And if you could just welcome Phil onto the program. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you, Shugufta.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. And I'd like to ask you, were you present there today?
Yeah, just what I was going to say. Yes, I was there, and I didn't actually go down to the Indian High Commission. I explained to the leaders of the demonstration that I wasn't going to be able to do that because I also have to go and speak to India, and I need to at least have some form of independence in the matter. But I did address the crowd before they moved from Victoria Square. I made a probably five-minute speech to them, encouraging them to continue the fight for human rights in Kashmir. I'm certainly with you all the way on this.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our viewers are still need some more information. And I'm glad that you said that you try to remain impartial so that our viewers, all of them, can actually understand what's actually happening in India and why so many people come to the streets to protest. So are you able to tell us a little bit about two issues here? One's NRC, which is the National Register for Citizens, and the CAA, which is a Citizens Amendment Act. Why are these two acts so important? How do they impact on people?
Yeah, well, it's their it's the combination of the two together. In fact, this was the subject of the last speech I made in the European Parliament on, I think, the 29th of January, the day before we all left because of Brexit. So it was my last speech in the European Parliament, and basically the issue is that the Citizens Amendment Act is blatantly discriminatory against Muslims because it allows people who have no paperwork in India, who were born there, they consider themselves Indians, but there's an awful lot who don't have paperwork. If you're a Hindu or even some of the other minorities, you're able to regularize yourself, but not if you're a Muslim. So and of course, then if you can't register, you can't vote. So basically, it has the potential to deprive make Muslims, not all Muslims in India, but those who, for one reason or other, have never formalised their paperwork, stateless, and also denied at whatever age, even if they're adults over the voting age, from voting. So it's a highly insidious and discriminatory piece of legislation, which we have been encouraging the Indian government to drop. So, as I say, this was very much, and it's really aimed at people who may be coming in from. Well, they say it's aimed at people coming in from outside and settling in India for the first time. But of course, because there are probably tens of millions of Indians who were born there, who don't have any paperwork, they are being treated as illegal immigrants when they were actually born in India, which is complete nonsense. And it's a typical measure that we're seeing from the BJP, which has come under an enormous amount of criticism from independent organizations devoted to human rights, both Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. And of course, we've seen Amnesty International banned from India for criticizing the government. And this is one of the issues that they've been criticizing them for.
How did people go about their daily lives before this act came in? Were they not at any point required any form of paperwork for their existence?
Yeah, well, a lot of the economy in India and a lot of what goes on in India is informal. I mean, you only have to travel around there to know that, and it's the same in much of the world. But you need at least the ability to be able to regularize yourself when the necessity arises. So I think it can only have been brought in for discriminatory reasons, because it clearly discriminates against one group of people.
So how do you think this matter should go forward? I mean, what pressure have you been able to apply on the Indian government, and why is it that in the face of so much international criticism that they're actually not asking or improving on the human rights record?
They have been under a lot of pressure, particularly from the Americans, because the Americans actually need the Americans want to focus on the challenge of China, and basically they want India on the team, but they're embarrassed by India's record on human rights, and feel that as it stands, India is a reputational hazard for the West if we bring them on side with us. So I think there is a lot of pressure going on behind the scenes at the moment to try to get Modi to backtrack on some of this stuff, and also on the issue of Kashmiri autonomy. I mean, I think I heard through the grapevine, through my political grapevine, that Modi actually told the Americans that he was going to restore democracy in Kashmir, but there's been absolutely no concrete measures to do any such thing. So I think there is pressure going on, and we've got to push harder. We're not seeing nearly enough pressure from the UK government. In fact, the reverse. the UK government is so keen on getting some sort of trade deal to sell to the people as a sop for the damage of Brexit, that they're ignoring the human rights issues in India altogether, just as they've done in smaller countries like Cambodia and Cameroon, where the human rights records and the virtual abolition of democracy has taken place. The British government's gone running there to try and get a quick trade deal, despite the human rights problems. And I think we have really got to. I mean, there are plenty of people in the Conservative Party who are on the same side of the argument of us, and they really need to make their voices felt within their party to turn the government round on this and insist on the government putting some ethics into their operations. But we have seen it from a number of Conservative MPs who join us on the webinars, and from Andrew Mitchell over the AIDS, the 0.7% aid issue. So they're out there, but they've really got to threaten the government with a major rebellion and turn the government round on this.
Join us, former MEP. So I'd just like to welcome you to our program today, Julie. Hope you're well.
Here again. Sorry, I had a few problems joining you, but I'm here now.
Yeah, thank you so much. There's benefit of technology, no end of issues. And I'd also like to welcome Claire Bidwell, who's as a leading activist on a lot of minority issues, and especially on human rights violations that are taking place, especially in Kashmir as well, and has done a lot of work around this. But I'd just like to talk about why we are here today. I know, Julie, you just joined us just shortly. So today, which is the 15th of August, is India's Independence Day. And this was celebrated, or is marked, as a Black Day by British Kashmiris, Pakistanis, and people sympathetic to humanity. And on this occasion, Tehreek-e-Kashmir, UK British Trade Union Council, Stop the War Coalition, and other organisations strongly condemned human rights violations and Black Day enforcement in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The international community was called upon to use its influence to stop the negative actions of the Indian government and the oppression of Kashmiris there. The protesters also chanted slogans against Narendra Modi, who's the Indian Prime Minister, the Indian Armed Forces, and they are in favour of complete independence of Kashmir. On this occasion today, in Birmingham and all across the world, wherever there were Kashmiris, on this Black Day, they also demanded from the international community that in light of the UN resolutions, the right of Kashmiris to self-determination should be given to them as soon as possible, and the laws of oppression in Indian-occupied Kashmir should be stopped. So, Julie Ward, I'd like to come on to you at this point and ask you, what are your thoughts around the human rights violations that are taking place in India, Indian-occupied Kashmir?
Well, actually, you're right in also talking about human rights abuses in India. And one of the things that I'm always at pains to emphasize is that my disagreement is not with the people of India. And many of the people of India are also having their human rights abused. And I think it's really important that we recognize this is an issue with the Modi government. And we should be standing shoulder to shoulder with the minorities in India who've been completely, the COVID situation has been absolutely appalling. People do have a right to health, and many of the lower caste people, the minorities, the agricultural workers, the bonded laborers, these people have been let down and I believe had their right to health taken away from them. But the human rights issues in occupied Jammu and Kashmir are not new. These issues have been the abuses have been happening for years and years and years. Now, very early on, when I was elected to be an MEP, a number of us got together to have a conference where we received a document of, it was basically a huge book which listed all the people who'd been disappeared, whose bodies had been found in mass graves, who'd been tortured, who'd been murdered. And it was a huge document. It was a testimony to decades of human rights abuses. I was actually very proud that the European Parliament played such an important role in receiving that document, having an important conference about it, trying to ramp up the interest within the European sphere about this issue, because it isn't a bilateral issue and it isn't a trilateral issue. It is a universal, global, international issue. And any organization or government that believes in human rights should be speaking really, really loudly about the ongoing violations. COVID has been a convenient cover, really, for Modi. It's enabled him to go harder on shutting down media, on blocking communications.
Sorry, Julie.
Yeah.
Julie, can I just ask you this question? That's a key point that you just made, and that is, why has or does the Indian government show no regard for humanity and minority communities in there?
Well, this is also what hard right governments do. I mean, it's classic. It's classic authoritarianism. It's happening in Turkey as well under President Erdogan. We're seeing it at a global level. I mean, Trump was in the same mold. We've got to look. There's a kind of autocratic, authoritarian, extreme right-wing populist model, really, and Modi is in that model. And it's a way of trying to stay in power, which is to disempower the masses. So you remove channels of communication, you make access to basic services really, really difficult. You never put you don't apply equality across the board, so that when we do have crises, we discover that people who are poor, who are on the sort of bottom rung, who may be homeless or whatever, these are the people who are not getting access to different services. So I think that it's classic populist authoritarian playbook, actually, and I also think it's a sign of a weak leader, because weak leaders are people who wouldn't be able to stay in power any other way. So what they do is to change the system in order to suit themselves. So they pass lots of laws which weaken human rights, weaken democracy, and COVID has allowed people to do that even more because they've used COVID as an excuse. I just hope that and it really bothers me, actually, that Western democracies aren't taking a stronger stance here. I came into the studio as Phil was speaking, and I think his words were, really, really clear, that we have a government here in the UK that, doesn't want to upset any potential trade partners, and, to the extent that the Conservative MPs who've got some understanding about this issue, and there are some, that basically they're in a minority and they're being told to shut up and that this isn't a priority, and come back next year. Well, that's not good enough, is it? It's not good enough, particularly when MPs represent constituencies that have large numbers of Kashmiri diaspora. So I think we've just got to keep identifying, the kind of animal that Modi is, and put him in that basket, because, that the more we understand about the way that populist authoritarian leaders operate, the more we can, I think, try to expose that. And we just need, I find it astonishing, there's all kinds of sanctions against Putin, which are absolutely right, but we should be having sanctions against other countries too. If we can have a sanction against Putin because of the Salisbury poisoning and because of various other things, then I think we should be willing to have trade sanctions and diplomatic sanctions elsewhere.
Thank you, Julie. I think Irfan Tahir, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, thank you so much, Shagufta, and thank you so much, Claire Bidwell. I want to ask you are running one of the campaign. What was the purpose of the Black Day campaign? Can you describe front of our audience, please?
Of course I can. I mean, our group is, as you know, Let Kashmir Decide. And then one of the things we did was supported this global movement that was occurring, Red for Kashmir. The idea, the concept behind it was to bring social media alight, with people turning their profiles red, uploading red images, just as the color that was most vibrant would most draw attention. And, signifying red for love, red for the blood, just the whole bright colors and courage and determination. And it's a global effort to try and get the people, international people, to stand up so we can put the pressure on our governments that we're seeing, where it's so clearly lacking at the moment. So it was a real success, it reached lots of people. As always, the process is just as important as the end result. And we've made some amazing connections around the world with people that have been doing work for Kashmir or pointing out Modi or human rights. So, it's grown stronger. What we wanted to do was keep the momentum up. And we saw the Independence Day as an opportunity to raise that. But we felt that going red at this time wasn't the right color to use. I mean, although, the color is just the concept, it's a symbol of something, we need to have some kind of branding to gather around. So we went Black for Kashmir, again, encouraging people to turn their profiles black. And it's the hope, it reaches people's friends lists. And already, 3 or 4 of my friends, why is your profile black? Gives me the opportunity to have that dialogue. Other people are then changing their profiles black, which, it springs it outwards. So, and again, uploading the post, whether it's black images of support or whether it's news, the protests, for example, uploading those. And it's just forming that unity. And under the hashtag Black for Kashmir, but also supporting other tags, it encompasses it all together. So you just need to go onto Facebook and look that up, or onto Twitter, and all the evidence of people, the global response to it around the world is there. And it's one of those things that you want to encourage, you want to motivate, you want to inspire, and you want to see others standing up, because then that really builds it up. I love the way you showed at the front at the beginning, the Birmingham demonstration, because you see the people shouting, you see the flags going, and you get filled with that energy from it. I know, Philip Benyon was there today and speaking, and I'm sure he'd say the same when there are people around you. And he mentioned the knowledge that they had, so that strength is growing. And when we've got seeing people fighting for what we're fighting for, I think just builds that unity. So with Kashmir, obviously, we feel the solution is self-determination. It comes above the politics, it comes above the religions, it comes to a humanitarian basis, and we can all fight for self-determination, one on the human rights issue, one in the resolutions under United Nations. Great Britain owes that duty to this country. And also, as an indigenous people have rights. Self-determination is a basic right. So we have all that strength. And the kind of hope is that all the Kashmiris, regardless of their ideologies, however they would like to see, the future of Kashmir, is that they all unite and, put this pressure on our governments to let us decide. And then obviously, the acts of Modi and what's happening in Kashmir and the brutalities and the genocide, then that gives it, that's the viability, the highlights, it justifies why we're doing it. And to reach for the support, as somebody said, we've got the Palestinians with their issues as well. We've got Syria, we've got the Rohingyas. You mentioned Cambodia and places earlier. There's so many of us that are suffering because of these dictatorships that are in government. I mean, our own government, I saw today, where they're saying we owe a duty of care to the people of Afghanistan. Well, what's happened to the people of Kashmir? It's not in our media. We're not seeing the Kashmir issue in our media. So anything we can do to raise that. And as Philip pointed out, it's all about the economic trade deals. It's about how our world is working. And unfortunately, we are seeing a big leaning to the right just now, to the controlling governments. And as you say, it keeps them in power because they're removing all the voices. India, for example, the journalists are being issued with FIRs. I've had, my Twitter account's been banned. I've lost my Facebook page about 3 times. My YouTube channel, I received a letter from YouTube. The Indian government have actually told them they want my YouTube channel banned. I've got 223 followers. So India, I mean, I think, it was mentioned earlier about this very poor, weak leadership because they're scared, they're worried. If you had no worries about the way you were leading your country or concerns, why would you need to try and stop people talking? So it doesn't add up. So, I mean, for me as a campaigner and human rights activist, I just want as many people to talk about it as possible on the basis of human rights.
Unmute. Shagufta, unmute.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. I was just going to say, Claire, I was just thanking and saying you've made a really valuable point. And that point actually leads us straight into, very nicely, thank you, towards Ranjit Singh Sarad. I'd like to welcome you to our program. Welcome, Ranjit.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you are a member of the World Sikh Parliament, and you're a solicitor on legal rights by profession. So Claire's concerns, I can bring them straight directly to you and say, when torture has become rife in a country, what legal rights do people have?
Thank you, Shagufta, and thank you to the to WNTV for organising an important event on an important day. I say an important day because for Indians, this is their Independence Day. They mark this day as the day that India achieved independence from the British colonialists, and it's not a day of independence, unfortunately, for everybody that's captive within Indian borders or Indian controlled territories. For the Sikh nation, it wasn't a day of freedom. For the Kashmiris, it wasn't a day of freedom. So I've just come literally now from the protest outside the Indian High Commission in London, where Sikhs jointly with Kashmiris protested on this day, India's Independence Day, against what happened in 1947 and everything that's followed. For us, it was one colonial power being replaced by another colonial power, because freedom was not delivered to the Sikh nation and neither to the Kashmiris. So, coming directly to your question, Shagufta, I think we can talk about individual human rights. So you mentioned torture, and we can talk about, not just imprisonment, we can talk about extrajudicial killings, we can talk about political prisoners, we can talk about mass killings, as we saw in Gujarat against the Muslims and in Delhi and elsewhere against the Sikhs in 1984 and subsequently. There are all sorts of individual human rights that are being breached against Sikhs and Kashmiris in India under Indian controlled territory. But I think on a day like this, on August the 15th, where the question of independence, harking back to 1947 and everything that's happened since, I think we need to go beyond the breaches of individual human rights. And we need to understand and appreciate that individual human rights are meaningless. They are literally meaningless when you're dealing with a state like India, unless you can deliver a collective human right that underpins individual human rights. And the collective human right that we're all talking about on August the 15th is, as Claire was just saying, the right of self-determination. So yes, we have unlimited documentation of breaches of individual human rights against Kashmiris, against Sikhs in India, and against others, Christians, the Nagas, the Assamese. It goes on and on and on. So we can sit here and list out all of those individual human rights atrocities, and they have happened and they're continuing to happen. But ultimately, the solution is the collective human right of self-determination being delivered in Punjab and in Kashmir and elsewhere in India, where this is being denied. I'd just like to say one particular point, though, which often gets missed. And this is, it's very pertinent to mention this at a time where India is somehow sitting on the Security Council holding the temporary presidency of that body. We're talking about a state that denies the right of self-determination officially. So the right of self-determination is enshrined in international law in Article 1 of the International Covenants on Civil and Political Rights, 1966. It goes back further than that, of course, but that was where it was officially enshrined as a basic human right. It was Article 1. It was given pride of place in the humanitarian legislation that the UN brought in. So the principal human right, the collective human right, is the right of self-determination of all peoples, all nations. Now, India signed up to the 1966 covenants, but when India signed up, India entered an official reservation. So this is not hidden, this is not concealed, this is an open challenge to the UN humanitarian law system. India said that as a reservation, they do not accept that the right to self-determination should apply to peoples and nations held captive within its territory. Now, the UN itself has asked India, ever since, has asked India to withdraw that reservation, and India refuses to do so. So we don't need to go very far to understand the crux of these conflicts, whether it's in Punjab, whether it's in Kashmir. We don't need to go very far. The answer is clear. India is denying by force, by use of massive systematic human rights violations, denying by force the exercise, which is supposedly guaranteed by international law. It is denying the right of self-determination being exercised in our homelands. And India needs to be brought to account. So I would appeal. I mean, we have people like Phil Bennion, who's a great supporter of the right of self-determination. I would appeal to the whole, political world here, both legal, people who look at international law, people who look at the geopolitical situation, the political establishments across the world, the decision makers, the opinion formers, the policy makers. All of these people need to understand that the root cause of conflict in Kashmir and also in my homeland next door, the Sikh homeland, is the denial of the right of self-determination. So I would like to emphasize that. I would like to make it clear that India is officially, according to the UN itself, India is in the dock on this issue. It's taken an unlawful position. It's an unlawful position. It's an illegal position. And it's led to mass conflict with hundreds of thousands of casualties in all of these regions. So we need to bring, I can talk about individual human rights abuses, and they've all been documented by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and many, many other smaller, locally based human rights organizations. But the reality is that we need to nail this point that India is the aggressor. India is the unlawful actor that has brought about these conflicts. And in order to actually diffuse these conflicts in what is, after all, a very, very precarious part of the world, with 3 nuclear powers regularly coming to to threatening positions, and we've seen something happen with India and Pakistan within the last couple of years. We've seen something happen with India and China last year. So something there could kick off at any moment because of these conflicts in Kashmir and the neighboring Punjab. So let's bring the international agenda to this point of self-determination. India is in the dock, and India should be held to account. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a detailed response, Ranjit. And just at this moment, we're just going to go for a quick break. So please, everybody, do join us in our after our short break, please.
Yes, Shagufta.
Yes, thank you, everybody, and welcome back. I'd like to move on back to Phil, please, if I may. And what I'd like to ask is why why was India not mentioned in the British Human Rights Report?
In the British Human Rights Report, sorry, I don't know which human rights report you're talking about, because I probably haven't read this one, the British Human Rights Report. I've not been involved in that at all. I mean, I used to join in the European Parliament with the periodic reviews of human rights in different countries, and I've joined in a number of critical ones on India in that forum. But of course, if this is something in the British Parliament, I will have nothing to do. It's nothing to do with me. It hasn't impinged on me, so. I can't really answer that one.
Irfan, would you like to take this?
Yes, Phil. Actually, the last time I think on 2020, the British Human Rights Department Foreign Department issued reports on human rights violation. They mentioned the other country, but why was India not mentioned in the
Is this a
British
recent?
Human Rights
This is a
report?
recent. Presumably, this is
Yeah,
a recent report from the Foreign Office.
yeah,
Recently,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Foreign Office.
I haven't read it. It hasn't come my way. But if India was not mentioned, the obvious answer is the pursuit of a trade deal. What other reason can there be? It's cozying up. It's cozying up to the Modi government from a government that we have ourselves. That, in my view, particular view, has elements of the same issues, same problems. But there are one or two things I do want to comment on, and that was on the self-determination issue. It is, I mean, self-determination isn't a it's it's very difficult to define where it should click in and where it shouldn't. So I've given this a lot of intellectual thought over the years. I mean, I certainly don't, I would say, have the right of self-determination by deciding that my property here is seceding from the United Kingdom. So you actually have to look at what constitutes a group of people that that right of self-determination should, this collective that Ranjit was talking about, as to at what point does it apply? Now, my views on Kashmir have always been that, I mean, firstly, legally it applies. I mean, if you actually go back even to the Raj, or at the end of the Raj in 1947, the status of Kashmir was never determined. It was, and it always, even when I was a child, it was a different color of pink on the map than India or Pakistan. It was a different color of pink, which even on a globe, it showed that it was actually a different place. The people who come from there think it's a different place, and I think that is a fairly universal thought from across the different communities in Kashmir, and the people in the either side of the line of control consider themselves to be Kashmiri, whether they're under in the Pakistan controlled area or the Indian controlled area. So I'm in many ways, I think it's very, very clear that Kashmir does consider itself, and Kashmiris do consider themselves a people, to which that right of self-determination should apply under international law. And certainly in the Kashmiri case, I don't think there's any evidence, any credible evidence that any full accession to India has ever been legally completed. Not legally completed in any case. I mean, the recent situation with the removal of autonomy. I mean, the Modi government tried to claim that the Kashmiri people, because they suspended the government, that the governor, who is actually the Indian national government's representative in Kashmir, the governor made the decision. I mean, how that's such an obviously stupid circular argument. It should have been left out of court, but and really the Supreme Court in India should be ruling the revocation of autonomy illegal quite clearly. But it's, I mean, people have been overheard in the Modi government saying, well, the Supreme Court is now in our pocket, and this is another of what we see with not necessarily right wing, but certainly authoritarian populist governments, is they try to capture the organs of state. Another thing that they do is to continue in power is to foster a majority that feels like that they're getting more of the resource, and a big enough group that keeps the populists in power. And I think that's obviously what's happening in India. But we shouldn't give up, because there's an awful lot of people in the Hindu community there who are very uncomfortable with the majoritarian position that Modi takes.
Okay, thank you very much, Phil.
There are people of principle there.
Thank you so much, Phil. You've made some really good points. I'd just like to move on to Claire and ask the question: shouldn't those who celebrate freedom understand the importance of freedom for others? And in particular, what role does the UN play?
Unmute, Claire. Unmute.
Yeah, it's really kind of ironic, isn't it? And a bit of a kick in the gut when, India, I mean, we don't, it's a happy day for India and many Indians because it's their celebration. But given that the government, have taken away and illegally occupying Kashmir, to be celebrating their Independence Day when Kashmir don't even have a choice to decide whether they want to be independent or what they want to do, is a real kick in the teeth. With regards to United Nations, I mean, the situation on that obviously is we're seeing they have their amazing articles and charters. We see in the resolutions, 14 resolutions which go back to saying the self-determination for Kashmir, but it's not functional at the moment. It's not functioning. They're just all talking. We do know that they've written, I believe, to India, if it's not 4 times now, regarding certain issues, you know, around their revocation of 370 and the human rights abuses, and there has been no response. And what they can do is they can show the public after, I think it's if it's 3 months. And so that's just continuing. So I think really part of the desire here with our campaigning and the voice and building that unity for self-determination is that we can somehow, you know, get the United Nations functioning. And I know it sounds so simple, but if we got a peacekeeping army into Kashmir, you know, remove the military straight away, the peace within the region, the money for both of those countries, you know, I've talked before about showing the power of how how powerful the economics could be if it was demilitarized, and the more money would then be going into India, into Pakistan, people's quality of life would go up, and our trade deals would be even better. So I sometimes think that's an angle to go on. But so I would love to see demilitarization and then plebiscite. And you know, solving it through that route. So for me, United Nations, I'd just like to see it functioning. They like I say, the amazing articles and charters, really good. You know, it's set up for perfection if it could be functional. And I think that's where I see the people, power on our governments and kicking the United Nations. I think we pay the United Nations. I'm not 100% in that, but I think they're our United Nations, probably comes out of our taxes. So it's that, you know, I do hold the belief if the people want something, then the people can have it. But we have to believe in ourselves and believe we can do that and make those connections, you know, with all the people that have the legal knowledge, that have the historical knowledge. And that's the beauty of forming unions and alliances, because we can't do anything on our own. We can't do anything as one person, but connected with all the knowledge and the skills we have, if we came together under the one point as everybody's discussion, self-determination, that could be incredibly powerful.
Thank you so much, Claire. And again, you've beautifully finished off on a point which I'm about to raise with Julie Ward. And the point is this, Julie, who has the authority to make India abide by universal human rights laws? Because it appears that world powers have double standards on human rights. They choose when to implement them and they choose when not to. So where does that, who does then have the authority?
Well, it's such a great, can you hear me? Yeah, it's such a great shame, isn't it, that the United Nations doesn't have teeth, really. And I think I say that particularly because I have enormous respect for Antonio Guterres and also for previous UN Secretary Generals, you know, and I think particularly Antonio Guterres, you know, is at the head of this organization at an extremely difficult moment. And he's shown incredible leadership with things like the Migration Compact, you know, calling at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic, calling for warring parties to put down their weapons. You know, this is not the moment to be fighting each other. We need to all be fighting the virus. So I'm quite sad, really, that the UN doesn't have the teeth that I believe it should have. And I think rather than criticizing the institution as a whole, we need to look at the organization, at the countries, at the parties who are undermining it. Because that, you know, and it goes back to the kind of leaders who, you know, are just power hungry and, you know, that want to retain power for all kinds of reasons, and, you know, want to have this much more kind of unilateral approach to things. You know, the divide and rule strategy is very much what Putin wanted. Putin wanted Brexit, by the way. He wants chaos. He wants chaos in the West, and, you know, Brexit is chaos. So it's a similar kind of thing. What I would say is that at the very end of my time in the European Parliament, so it was probably at the end of 2019 or even in January 2020, I hosted a conference with an organization called UNPO, which is Unrepresented Nations and People organization. And I had been encouraging Kashmiri friends to get involved with this organization, because it is a way for people who are not represented to come together and try and apply greater pressure, because it's very difficult doing things, individually. And we had a conference which was called Compromised Space, and it was precisely about this issue, about the UN being undermined, about the institutions and the charters and the norms, if you like, that the UN has uses and proposes and promotes. And it was about how this is being undermined, by having representatives from inappropriate countries on the Security Council, on the Human Rights Council, and so on. And I think the UN, I always felt when the EU was under attack, that's the time for us to be the best friend of the EU. And I feel that also about the UN. The UN needs to be strengthened. It needs our support. So perhaps look at some of the different organizations with the UN that may be doing work under the radar, being able to be a bit more effective perhaps than some of the some of the large committees and councils that exist, which just constantly block. And they're not just blocking issues to do with Kashmir. Palestine has been blocked as well. Kosovo is constantly, Serbia doesn't want Kosovo to be a country. So there's all kinds of blockages happening, at international level. But then we see, in crises, the UN goes in and does just amazing work. And even here in the UK, we've now got incredible child poverty, and UNICEF stepped in, wrote a report which absolutely shamed our government. And I thought that was really, really brave of UNICEF to do that. So I do think there are good people within the UN, and there are mechanisms that we can use. So we've just got to be brighter, cleverer, about how we do this, but not to abandon these international agreements, rather to keep talking about them, to keep educating people. And perhaps just to finish on this question, I was elected in 2014 to represent the northwest of England, which has a huge South Asian diaspora. And I did not understand, I didn't really know about the Kashmir and Jammu situation. I didn't know much about what was happening in Palestine. And often that is because these things are very, very complicated. They're complex. But I made it my business to find out, because my constituents were asking me, and I needed, in fact, I went to visit these places because I needed to know from the people who were there, the day-to-day situation for people who are under occupation. So I couldn't go to Jammu and Kashmir, but I went to Mufassirabad, and I was able to meet people, close to the situation. And I think a lot of this has to be about education. So I just want to thank Claire for what she's doing, because, civil society organizations, grassroots organizations, continuing to educate people about these complex issues, where people just turn off because they think, well, it's too complicated for me, I don't understand. But if you boil it right down to simple human rights, which should be upheld and which we should all want to promote, actually, it's not that difficult. And I think each of us maybe needs to operate within the spheres and the areas where we have expertise. So for me, it was always about women and children. It's about culture, it's about education, it's about women and children. And I feel on much stronger ground when I'm addressing those issues, I don't often talk about trade because I'm not a trade expert, you know. But let's all of us sort of pool our incredible knowledge and skills and commitment, because together, it's only by being together that we can actually help to change this round. And if you don't know about the UNPO organization, I would urge you to look at it. They really are doing fantastic work.
So, very sorry for interruption, Julie. The one question from the audience, they are asking, how will peace win and when will the unrest disappear?
Sorry, what was the question?
It's a question from the audience. How will peace win and when will the unrest disappear?
Okay, well, we've got a world in foment, haven't we? You know, we don't have peace in many countries right now. My hope is young people, and that's partly because I've met young Kashmiris. I've met when I was in Mufazrabad, we went to the university there. I also, you know, I've been engaging with young people from conflict countries, and it seems to me that young people are the hope, really, and we have to keep empowering them more. Keep, you know, because young people are not born to hate. They're not, you know, and they also have a great sense of justice and fairness too. And in the same way that they are rising up globally to fight climate change, I believe that young people are also crying out for peace. You know, we've had a terrible mass shooting here in the UK, and this is commonplace in the US. And actually, it was young people in the US who came out against came out against the use of guns and for gun control. And I think increasingly, you know, my generation, we messed up, didn't we? We've left a terrible world for these young people. But when I'm with young people, I'm in awe, actually, of their knowledge, their commitment, their passion, their determination, right, to actually carve out a sustainable future for themselves and for other young people.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'd just like to move on to Ranjit. And Efan, would you like to ask a question to Ranjit?
Yes, Ranjit, actually, after these kind of discussions, do you have any hope for the United Nations, European Union, or United Kingdom?
I think it's difficult to predict how these multinational organizations are going to behave. But I think ultimately we don't need necessarily to rely always on these multinational organizations. And let's face it, they are self-interested multinational organizations. You know, let's not beat about the bush here. These are clubs of states that have come together for a particular self-interested reason in most cases. So let's not rely entirely upon these people or these institutions. Absolutely, we should be insisting that they play according to the international law rulebook. They should not be selective. And you know, we vote for our politicians, whether it's in the UK or elsewhere in the world, and we should absolutely be asking our politicians to formulate foreign policy on the basis of recognizing and respecting international law. But I think in terms of hope, I think your question was really about hope. And in terms of hope, I think history lends us a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. And one of the things that I would say to the people who are struggling in Kashmir, and in my case in Indian occupied Punjab as we see it, is that artificial states that are being held together by brute force ultimately disintegrate. We've seen it with the former USSR and other Eastern Bloc countries. There were artificial states with multinational states where these various nations were forced together and were held together by brute military force. Ultimately, that doesn't work. We can call it democracy, we can call it people power, but ultimately, artificial states that are held together by force through massive human rights abuses, through genocidal force against the populations that they control within their territory. These states will not stand the test of time. And I think what I would urge Kashmiris to do, and Sikhs and other Palestinians and other aspirant nations, we've heard about the UNPO organization, which is made up of aspirant nations. And I've interacted with the UNPO and interacted with their members. So there are many, many nations and peoples across the world who are seeking the right of self-determination. And I think ultimately the hope is there that these multinational states that are held together by force cannot last forever. And democratic action, peaceful political protest will ultimately prevail. It may be that these states fall apart because of other forces, war, other forms of conflict, but we would hope that that doesn't happen in South Asia. I think all of us on this panel, all of us listening to this program would hope that we have a peaceful means of conflict resolution in South Asia. And the absolutely only method that's available for peaceful conflict resolution in accordance with democratic norms is the implementation of the right of self-determination.
Thank you so much, Ranji. And with those closing remarks, I've got to conclude this today's discussion, which we've had regarding the human rights violations that are taking place in India and in Kashmir. And today, 15th of August, which is India's Independence Day, hundreds and thousands across the world and in the UK has marked it as Black Day, only because they have no freedom. They have no freedom to be able to live their daily lives. At this point, I'd just like to thank our guests, Philip, Claire, Julie, and Ranjit, and Irfan for bringing us all together. And please do keep watching WNTV. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And with this, I say goodbye.